Good afternoon and welcome to the National Teachers Hall of Fame 2023 Roundtable webinar. My name is Ken Weaver and I am the Interim Deputy Director of the Hall of Fame and incredibly honored to be sitting with the inductees in the class of 2023. At this time, I want to introduce the inductees to you. Our first inductee is Dr. Rebecca Hamilton, 11th and 12th grade English and Advanced Placement Capstone Seminar and Research Teacher at Suncoast High School in Riviera Beach, Florida, with 39 years of experience. The second inductee is Dr. Eric Hook, 9th through 12th grade Chemistry and Advanced Placement Chemistry teacher at Miami Senior High School in Miami, Florida, with 34 years of teaching experience. The next inductee is Dr. Karen Long, 6th grade STEM teacher and director of Educational Technology and Innovation Center at Mount Bird Academy in Mount Bird, Florida, with 34 years of teaching experience. Kristen Record, 9th through 12th grade physics and advanced physics teacher at Frank Scott Bunnell High School in Stratford, Connecticut, with 22 years of teaching experience. And Monica Washington, 11th grade English teacher at Texas High School in Texarkana, Texas, with 20 years of teaching experience. The format for today's webinar is the inductees will be answering a series of questions. I'll pose the question and then we'll start with one of the inductees, and the inductee who starts will rotate through the class, and then every member will have a chance to respond after that. And so we're going to start, Becky, with you and the first question, and that is, you have been in the classroom for more than 2 decades. Actually, you've been in the classroom for more than 3 decades.
4 decades.
All right. So what keeps you in the classroom? What do you find most rewarding about your teaching career?
I would have to say it's relationships. I think that the relationships that are formed between teacher and teacher, teacher and administration, but ultimately between teachers and their students. And we've all experienced having colleagues who were once our students and now they teach with us. And some of them have even said, I'm here because of you. And that's overwhelming. But I just believe that when you form those relationships, it gets students interested in education and it keeps them motivated and they want to do things to do well because they believe in themselves the way the teacher should believe in them.
Thank you, Becky. Eric?
I would say it's my students. They energize me every year. I learn from them, and that's where I'm the happiest. And I think that I can still make a difference, not only academically, but also at the emotional level. I think that my students are very happy, and I give them a happy, very welcoming environment. And I think that that's what keeps me there, just to be with them. I'm also an advisor of a club, and I feel like I can do way beyond just the classroom. And at this point, after 34 years of teaching, I have students who now are my colleagues, as Becky said, and they keep me very excited to be in the classroom. So I think I still have lots to give to my students.
Thank you, Eric. Karen?
I'll echo the same answer, but my students, who I've always called my babies and my kids, they'll always be my kids, no matter how old they get. They are the ones that keep me teaching in the classroom. And for me, the most rewarding thing about teaching is when those students, those babies come back years later and talk to you about how you've impacted their lives. I think that's something that really hits my heart, that I know that the work that I've done has impacted them and hopefully changed their lives for the better.
Thank you, Karen. Kristen?
I'll echo the same thing in that it's my teenagers that keep me in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as Karen said, my kids are always my kids, even though they'll start off as 16, 17, 18-year-olds. Some of my kids are now in their late 30s. I love their enthusiasm, having fun with them, having an alive, engaging classroom. But one of the things that also keeps me in the classroom is that I am a teacher leader, that I've been able to stay in my classroom teaching content with the kids that I love and the content that I love. But I have many leadership responsibilities in my building, in my district, at the state and national level. I'm very involved and engaged in education policy. I do a lot of professional development. I mentor beginning educators, and I'm able to do all of these things and still be in the classroom full time. So that helps me to grow as an educator, to always have something new and different to look forward to. I mean, teenagers are different every single day. But for me, the rewarding aspect of teaching is seeing the growth of students. I think that there's that quote that says, as a teacher, you never know how far your impact will go or how much your influence will last. And sometimes you can see that influence immediately over the course of a semester or a year or two in high school. But as a high school teacher, I get the privilege of keeping in touch with kids in college and into careers. And this honor has even allowed kids again, that are now grown adults who I taught 23 years ago that I haven't heard from in 20 years, to reach out and talk about an impactful moment that they remember. And that, at the end of the day, is what's really rewarding, knowing that I've made a difference.
Thank you, Kristen. Monica?
Yes. So this question is really hard to have a completely unique answer, because I think if you are doing it right, you're there because of relationships. You're there first and foremost because of the relationships that you form with students. And for me, it's that classroom community. When you have kids who will tell you that, I don't really like English, but I love being in here. And when you realize that you are home for them, you are safety to them, you are someone who they know will see them, will hear them, will honor them. That for me, and when you realize that that's having a positive impact on them, that keeps you coming back. For me, I have spent so much time just trying to get to know who my students are. I love to teach English, but it's when I see them becoming good human beings is when I'm most floored by this profession, because I think that's what we're ultimately here for. We love science, English, but we want to put good humans in the society. So yeah, for me, that's the most rewarding thing, when I see that they get it, not just English, but they see how they're supposed to positively impact their communities.
Thank you, Monica. Eric, we'll start with you on the next question.
Okay.
What is the most pressing issue facing teachers today?
I think the most pressing issue facing teachers today is the shortage of teachers. At times, I think we do a great job recruiting teachers, but not retaining teachers in education. And of course, salary is very, very important, but I think that teachers need support. And in many places right now, because of the shortage of teachers, and we have lowered our standards, and we're bringing teachers into the profession, and we are not getting them ready. And due to that, I think they get a teacher burnout really fast. And that, of course, maybe we'll discuss it more later, about mentoring teachers so they can actually stay in the classroom. I would say that is the main issue that I think that is affecting education today, teachers.
Thank you, Karen.
I think for me, it's there seems to be an attack on teachers and the teaching profession. And it's prevalent in social media, it's prevalent in the media, that we as educators are perceived as the villain. A lot of times, the word indoctrination keeps getting thrown out. Other verbs and opportunities to attack a profession of professionals that have spent their lifetime specializing in what we do best, and that's educating children. And to me, we need to step back and realize that we're really all on the same team. Parents want what is best for their children. We want what is best for their children. It's coming to a common ground and understanding that we're all a team that makes it happen. And until we do that again, I truly fear for our profession in many ways.
Thank you, Karen. Kristen?
I'd have to echo what Karen said. I think the most pressing issue facing teachers today is the attacks on our profession. Just think over the course of the past 3.5 years, the swing in public perception about the importance of teachers. And during the pandemic, we were the heroes. We were the essential workers. Nothing could go on without centering a conversation about the teachers teaching and the need for kids to be in schools with their teachers and learning, and how important and vital we were to parents and families and kids during the height of the pandemic. And now, in many places, we're the enemy. We are told by people who have never set foot in a classroom what to teach and how to teach it. People forget that we are the experts in our content, and we are the experts at the children in our classroom and how to teach our children the best way possible. So for me, it's not just about the most pressing issues facing teachers. The most pressing issue facing our profession is the lack of professionalism. I think that the vast majority of our society views us, and in what other profession do you have outsiders that get to dictate what the policies and practices are? It does not happen in any other profession except the teaching profession. And I think that it's really sad, and it's really difficult. It's driving people out of the profession. And to not put too fine a point on it, in order to be inducted into the National Teachers Hall of Fame, you have to have been a classroom teacher for 20 years. If we don't stop the attacks on the teaching profession, you're gonna have to look really hard to find people who meet that basic level of criteria. And that's not good for kids. It's not good for our society.
Thank you, Kristen. Monica?
Yes, I'll say amen, amen, and here's my echo. Absolutely the most pressing issue right now is this negative narrative that is being painted about educators, about the profession in general. And teachers are having to do this very hard job in the midst of bad legislation, loud voices by bad actors who know nothing, very little to zero about what happens in a classroom. We know as educators that students need those welcoming environments that allow them to talk to each other, to ask questions. And when we have legislation that is proposed and then passed that is inhibiting that or prohibiting that altogether, then how are we going to give our students what they need, our kids what they need? And so if I'm in school to do this job and then I enter a school and I'm told that I cannot do that job, and if I do that job in the way that I know it needs to be done, then my job is then in danger. Then why would I want to be there? And so teachers so often are not asked what the best thing is for the students that they teach. And I think that has to stop. There's this negative narrative, and Karen mentioned it, that parents and teachers don't want the same thing. We absolutely want the same thing. We do want to let kids be kids. Like, there are all these little buzzwords and phrases that are just floating on the internet, and they are so far away from what's actually happening in schools. And so when you create an environment like that is so far away from what we know has to be in schools on the positive side, then we're not giving kids what we need. If teachers are not okay, kids are not okay. And so we really have to think about what we're doing to create an environment where people want to do this job, because if we don't, as Kristen said, as Karen said, nobody is going to want to. And then what does that mean for our society? We're putting our democracy at risk when we constantly attack public education or education in general.
Thank you, Monica. Karen, third question, we'll start with you.
Okay.
We have seen a fairly large percentage of teachers leaving the profession during their first 3 years of teaching, even before the pandemic. What factors cause early career teachers to leave the profession, and what can be done to reverse this trend?
Well, not to beat the point home, but I'm going to put it down again. You know, young teachers see what's going on in our classrooms today and in the general public perception. And, you know, and it's not everybody, to be fair. You know, we have this wonderful city we're in this week that has shown incredible support for the profession. But that loud group that is really making it difficult. Young teachers are looking at that now and wondering what they're getting into, and some are leaving. I think the latest statistic that I saw was from 2022 that of the teachers in the teaching profession that had less than 15 years, 40% of them were considering leaving the classroom, and of that 40%, 80% of them were leaving the profession altogether. And so that's an alarming statistic. And so there's a variety of different ways. I think it's a systemic problem. We need to fix the perception of education as our profession in this country. But I think young teachers need mentoring support, and with veteran teachers that have proven themselves, and they should have that mentoring support minimum 5 years, I'd say even 10, on a reduction basis as the years go on and they prove themselves. And then in addition to that, I think teacher education programs also need a rehaul. My love is science. I teach, majority of the time was elementary science. I had 1 semester of science methods, and that simply is not enough. You have to start at a foundation, and reading and mathematics is very much emphasized in colleges and teacher education programs. Social studies, history, PE programs, science programs, music education. Unless you are going to major in those areas, you don't have enough training. And so I think it starts from the pre-service level. And then once you get into a permanent job, then you need to be there for those young teachers to develop and grow and listen to. And just as important, we need to listen to them, because they are coming in with the latest strategies and the research and the theory that has changed over time. I know for me, I started off with chalkboards, and now I'm working with 70-inch screens that are touch screen smart boards. You know, things are going to change over time. And so it's just as beneficial for me to learn from young teachers as it is for young teachers to learn from what I have experienced.
Thank you, Karen. Kristen?
I would say there's 3 major factors that drive early career educators to leave the profession, not in any specific order, but salary, working conditions, and mentoring. I think that early career teachers, whether we are talking about someone who is fresh out of university or an early career teacher who is coming in from another profession, face a hurdle of a non-professional salary. A lot of teachers early in their career, and many throughout the majority of their career, work more than 1 job. Imagine working a full-time job and then having to go to another part-time job in order to make ends meet, in order to pay your student loans. And in my state and in many other states, you have to have a master's degree to be a teacher. And that's a non-negotiable. So we have this salary gap and the salary problem that I think makes it difficult for people who really want to be in the classroom and have their hearts in the classroom to stay in the classroom. That's exacerbated by working conditions. We often, particularly in the high school level, a brand new teacher doesn't get the most desirable schedule. You get the leftovers that the other teachers picked and chose what they want. A beginning teacher shouldn't be teaching 3 or 4 or 5 completely different classes. The beginning teacher should have a hand-tailored schedule that allows them the opportunity to hone their practice during the day. And that includes good mentoring. And a lot of places don't have a strong induction program for early career educators. They lack the ability to connect on a daily basis with job-embedded professional learning and mentoring. All of those things are expected to be done outside of school and outside of your work hours. But again, a lot of people have second jobs. So the problems all sort of coalesce and you just get, I think, stuck on this same wheel. What do we need? We need better legislation and policies to address working conditions for teachers overall and to improve teacher salaries overall.
Thank you, Kristen. Monica?
Sure. So I'll try not to echo, but I will say that as I think about this question, one of the things that comes to mind for me is this toxic culture that we have in our profession, that teachers must be suffering martyrs and never ask for a raise and stay, 5 hours past the last bill and, come back and brag about that even though you're tired. And I think that just feeds into that cycle of burnout that we've sort of hinted at today. And then there's also this culture of you shouldn't make a mistake. Like, you're the teacher, you should know everything. And I think that also is feeding into this negative impact on our profession as a whole. I think what leaders have to do is they must prioritize self-care. They must prioritize leadership. They must prioritize risk-taking. And they need to provide some autonomy and say that in this school, you are a teacher, but you should also always be a learner. And so if you do a lesson and the lesson doesn't go well, then I'm not going to come and, berate you for it. Let's talk about what you'll do better the next time. There's not enough of that. There is, let me get you out quickly. And we don't allow teachers enough time to grow. They need the space to be able to do that. And to be told that it's okay to be tired and to make a mistake. But there are people around you who can help you through those beginning years. I think those are the things. So I think as leaders are thinking about just the management of the building, like, I know that's important, but they have to think about what the people need. Again, there's this African proverb, when the people in villages greet each other, they don't say, hey, how are you? They say, and how are the children, right? And so, because that's what's priority. So I think that when we prioritize the working conditions for educators, we are also prioritizing the learning conditions for our kids. And so until we realize that those two are linked, and you're not going to have student learning when you don't have, care for teachers, and if you have, learning conditions that teachers are having to work themselves under the table for, then that's, even if the test scores are good, they won't be for long, because those same teachers are not going to stay. So
Great.
Thank you, Monica. So let's see, Kristen, now start with you. What are the characteristics or traits of an effective principal or teacher leader?
Well, I think being a principal and being a teacher leader, two completely different spheres. For principals, you're the instructional leader of the building. I think that a distributed leadership model helps to grow teacher leaders. And so that's where I think principals and teacher leaders are linked together. Effective principals understand how to build a team and how to trust the members of their team to lead in different areas in their school building. And that's, I think, foundational to having that perspective is an asset-based mindset. There's always going to be, as Monica said, the test scores, the naysayers, the problems, and you can get way down to that as the building's instructional leader. But what do we have to grow on? What do we have to move forward? So I think that asset-based mindset is really important as a principal. As a teacher leader, I think probably the best characteristic is to have an open mind and to know where you want to make your biggest impact. Being a teacher leader doesn't mean you lead in everything. You can be a teacher leader who leads in professional development. You can be a teacher leader who leads in policy work. You can be leading in advocacy work. You can be leading with students as the center of your leadership. So there's many, many avenues for being a teacher leader that don't necessarily have a title attached to them either. And so for me, that's why I say I've been privileged that I've had many opportunities as a teacher leader to sit in many of these spheres and still stay in the classroom. And I think that principals who value that asset that they have in teacher leaders, rather than seeing a teacher leader as a threat, that is a skill that needs to be developed, I think, by more building level administrators. Because quite honestly, I don't think distributed leadership models are something that's taught in an administrative preparation program, but that it should be, because that's a really important skill.
Thank you. Monica?
Yes. Well, since I mentioned a little bit about principals earlier, I'll stick to the teacher leader part. I think the most important thing is that we don't see our classrooms as islands. We don't go in there, close the doors. So often we think that this thing that I'm doing is just something that I'm doing with my students, but other people are probably doing it. It's not anything new. But no, we have to talk to each other and share, because that thing that you think is normal that everybody else is doing may be the thing that will revolutionize someone else's practice. And so it starts with that communication with our colleagues and with our peers. That's teacher leadership. You don't have to necessarily have a title, but teacher leaders are everywhere. And it starts with those conversations that we have in our PLCs, in our, in faculty meetings where we're sharing. When we read a book and there is something that is insightful to us, sharing that. When we go to a PD and everybody couldn't go to the PD, but you did, what are you bringing back? So seeing your learning as an opportunity to help others grow, like for me, that's the heart and that's the epitome of teacher leadership. Like Kristen, I've had so many great opportunities to be in spaces and learn and to speak. And I always think of, I wish everybody could be here, right? Like I wish so many teachers could experience what we're experiencing this week. And I think that as long as we see every opportunity as a way to help not just ourselves grow, but our colleagues grow, and then think about how that is going to ripple to those students that you may not even know in the building. So that's teacher leadership, taking what you have. And for new teachers, beginning teachers, you're teacher leaders as well. Karen mentioned it earlier, those things that you think, oh, well, that person's been teaching 30 years. They don't need me to. Yes, they do. So share what we're learning. That's the heart of teacher leadership.
Great, thank you. And Becky, my apologies. This is around every teacher has a chance to answer every question, and I've been not getting yes. So did you want to talk anything, or did you want to address the most pressing issue facing teachers today?
No, I think that it was covered, except that all of the issues have diminished recruiting, because why would anyone want to go into teaching if they're not allowed to do what they're supposed to do? And then the mentoring, I think, is vital, but not to use classroom teachers as mentors, because then you're just dumping more on their shoulders instead of giving them some leeway to help other teachers. But that's all I'll say about that.
Okay, thank you. And so about the characteristics, traits of an effective principal or teacher leader.
Okay, I was thinking about a principal I had who I absolutely loved. She's the only principal I ever had that I socialized with. We would go to breweries together, and we learned what we each liked and what didn't like. And she would come into our classrooms. A lot of teachers did not like this, because she would just drop in. She'd stay for 5 or 10 minutes. She'd write a little note, leave it on the desk, and then walk out. And I thought that was amazing, that she actually made time in her schedule to come in and just see what's going on. And then, like Monica said, that could be revolutionary for somebody else. Oh, I saw this going on in Monica's class. Have you ever thought of trying this? Something like that. But a lot of teachers feel that's invasive. Well, my feeling is my classroom is not an island, and people are always invited in. Come see what we're doing. Some days it's not much, and other days it's a whole lot. So I think that's important. And the other thing that I wish principals especially would do, teacher leaders I think do this already, is when some people are having an issue or causing a problem, don't give a blanket criticism to the entire faculty at a faculty meeting. You sit down with those teachers individually and say, look, this is an issue. because we're not all doing it. And then we look around at each other and wonder, well, who's doing that? And then also with the praise, not just say, oh, you guys are doing such a good job, because we know some people aren't doing such a good job. Call those people out in front of everyone else and say, you know, the fact that you did this was really great, or that, or whatever. And it doesn't have to always be test scores and things like that. We always talk about the athletic achievements and, you know, all of that students do, but to do the same for teachers. What are teachers doing poorly? Talk to them individually. Were they doing well? Say it in front of the group so everyone can learn from it.
Thank you, Becky. And Eric, going back to the question we started with Karen, do you have any factors that cause early teachers to leave the profession?
Well, I think we already discussed that, and it's true. I mean, it goes back to the respect to teachers. So if there's no respect, then the shortage of teachers will continue, and no one will stay in the profession. So I guess it all starts again. When you asked me the question, present issue, I meant to say that, and then that all this comes after because of it, and it's not going to get better until we get people to respect what we do. And it is true, and I think it was Christian that said it, that politicians, like our school board members, they're not teachers, so they really do not understand what's happening in the classrooms. But they are quick to say you should do A, B, C. And what we know is that we are dealing with students, people, and not all of us learn the same way. Not all of us are in the same situation, and they're trying to get a cookie cutter. This is the idea that works for everybody, which it does not. So the factors to get teachers to stay, obviously, is we said mentoring, which you said, if we're in the classroom, sometimes we do not have time for it. And that's something that you said before, maybe teachers that have retired. And so that would be for 3. And then effective principals, whatever. I think the principal has to be one that is willing to listen to teachers. We are the experts in the classrooms. And if the principal has an open door policy and listens to teachers, even though we may be wrong at times, or they may be wrong, but accept that you are wrong. And accept that somebody else can tell you what should work. And just because it didn't work doesn't mean that the teacher does not know what he's doing. So, and of course, giving us time to share. I think that's the problem, that we're always in such a hurry, test taking. I mean, we have exams, there's so much pressure that we do not have time to actually sit and analyze what's going on or learn from each other. I know that we always say, oh, PD and all this, but sometimes you're so tired that people do not actually go to the PDs. So we don't have the time to actually share. And yes, brand new teachers, they teach me every day. They do teach us every day. So I think that we have to put our egos aside and say, I'm willing to learn from you. And sometimes teachers say, what is this new person going to teach me? And I think that's what you were asking. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Karen?
I'll sum up everybody's thoughts with, I think, a good principal and even a good teacher leader and good classroom teachers. The foundation for it is caring. You have to care for the people that you are within leadership, and you have to also be as willing to follow as you are to lead. Teddy Roosevelt once said, no one will care how much you know unless they know how much you care. And good leaders are those that show care for the people that they are in their charge, not just on a professional level, but on a personal level. And I think it all starts there.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Monica, start with you. What have we as educators learned from the pandemic that will help us to transform teaching and learning?
So I think I want to start with what everybody else learned first. Everybody else learned what teachers already knew, and that is teaching is hard. And they finally got it for a hot 2 weeks. And of course, then the attack started. But I'll say that. Another thing that I think we learned absolutely is that our students need that welcoming environment. They need each other. They need the social aspect of learning. And we learned that, learning doesn't happen, we knew this, but learning does not happen in isolation. As I support teachers and they say, Monica, students have forgotten how to do school, right? It's just reminding us of just how important it is for us to create those environments for our students. I think another thing that many educators knew and that other people are now jumping on the bandwagon is that there are so many inequities in education already for our students. And what the pandemic showed us was that, it shined a spotlight and it exacerbated those inequities that were already there. There were, tweets and all these conversations, people were saying, kids don't have internet, like everybody doesn't have internet, or there's no one at home to help you. No, every kid does not have all the tools that they need. And so finally people started to get that, and we saw this wave of us finally starting to use our ESSER funds and put in programs that could help kids close some of those inequities that they had. And so I think that what we can learn from that moving forward is that we have to think, first of all, not about what the majority of students have, but what will happen if someone does not have access. So we should be access minded going forward, because the pandemic took away so much of our access for students and for our relationships that we needed to build with them. And so it showed what educators already knew to others. Unfortunately, now we're having to remind people that, as we stop talking about the pandemic, in so many spaces, that these inequities have not gone away. And so it shined a spotlight. And I think as educators, we have to keep beating that drum that we still have kids who need things. And so, yeah, inequities were there and it shined the light. Let's keep talking about it so we can get all of our kids what they need.
Thank you, Monica. Becky?
As a pragmatist, I would say Google Classroom was the best thing, because now when students are absent, they can just look on Google Classroom to see what they've missed out on, instead of sending an email and saying, what do I need to do? Or waiting until they come back to school. And when you're on an AB schedule, like I know many of us are, you don't see a child every day, you see the child every other day. So they used to use that as an excuse to not do things, even if their friends told them. But having Google Classroom, every assignment I give is on there, so they can see that and use that. But also, I think Monica really stressed the fact that kids need to be in school. We learned that they really need to be there. I teach juniors and seniors, so I may have had a handful who were very successful at home because they're self-motivated. Those students who are not intrinsically motivated, though, they need to have that teacher or their peers there with them, pushing them to get things done. So I think that's about all we can do.
Thank you, Becky. Eric?
What I learned from the pandemic, and I think at first it could be an amazing thing, was technology. Giving access to students who never had that much access, and if they were home, it worked. But I think that technology can be a two-edged sword, because I think people are depending on it so much now that maybe, and I see this more like in elementary, that the parents sometimes are not as involved because the kids can find the answers online. And we do know that that's just getting answers and not actually learning. There's no critical thinking behind it. They're just getting the answers. So I did notice that, to me, of course, Zoom, which when it happened in COVID, I never heard that word before. But now I use it all the time when I have students who are not in school, and I'll tell them, I'll record the class and then you can watch it later. So it has opened a lot of opportunities for students, and a lot of athletes that leave early. They can say, hey, I'm going to be out, and I can get it from there. But again, two-edged sword, because it can be taken to the other extreme. I also think that I learned from the pandemic that the emotional needs that students have. And before, I knew, but I realized when they came back how much they were missing out. And even to this day, we still are seeing the effects that COVID had on those students. They're not where they're supposed to be emotionally. So I learned to now be more aware of them as students. I was before, but now I'm like, wait, Michael doesn't look happy. Something's going on there. Or, so I'm more aware of that. And also that students learn in many different ways. We always know there's different ways to teach something, but now I'm like, maybe this could work another way. So I learned many different things from COVID, and horrible as it was, I think that it made us better teachers.
Thank you, Rick. Karen?
I think for me, it made me even more proud to be an educator during the pandemic. As far as when we started, this idea of doing online teaching was a very foreign concept for all of us. And in a very real way, as professionals, we were thrown into the very, very deep end of the pool. And I don't believe anybody sunk. You saw some of the most creative lessons. You saw teachers embracing the fact that this technology had to be used in order to continue education, to provide some sense of normalcy for our kids. And it was really, truly a shining moment for our profession. You saw, again, positivity in some of the comments that was out there in the media about people generally not understanding how we were able to do what we do, but we did it. And I think that's one of the wonderful things that was brought out from the pandemic was that appreciation. I also believe that it threw a loop for a lot of teachers that were avoiding technology. Technology tends to be a very scary thing as a PhD in ed tech. I personally loved that time because it forced people to step out of their comfort zones and see the powerfulness in the tool that technology is. And it's continuing now. So where we might not have used things like VR and AR in the classroom, now I'm seeing it more prevalent because they're not as afraid of it anymore. And so I think the pandemic helped to teach our colleagues that technology is a great tool. It can be used well. And I thought it shared with the general public that we are pretty darn good at what we do. So
Thank you. Kristen?
I'll pivot back to the way Monica framed the question at first, and what did people outside of the profession learn, or what they should have learned from the pandemic that we already knew, which was that schools and our society, in particular, our American society, have taken over the responsibility of so many societal problems. When the pandemic began and schools closed, meaning school buildings closed, because school was never closed. I taught every day. School was open, the building was closed. But what were people's first concerns? How are kids going to get food? That's not a school problem. That's not a teaching and learning problem. That's a society problem. That's a poverty problem. That's an access and equity problem. How are kids going to get their food? Second thing that came up, what am I going to do with my kid because I have to go to work? That's a child care problem. We have a child care crisis in our country. We have a childhood poverty crisis in our country, and schools are looked to fix, solve, and manage and deal with all of that on top of teaching and learning. And that is something that I think people saw very clearly for the first time, but now it's very quickly to forget that. And I think that we forget that at the peril of capitalizing on all of these good things that we have learned coming out of the pandemic. Because what did we learn, and hopefully society learned? Teachers, the actual people sitting here at this table, we are the essential factors in the school buildings. We need more people in schools, not less people. We need more teachers in classrooms to lower class sizes. We have to be able to better individualize our instruction. That requires more teachers in classrooms. That requires more interventionalists. We need more social workers, more school counselors. We need more people, not necessarily more things. And that's something that I think we forget now that, oh, the pandemic's over. We are still reaping the problems of the pandemic, but I think we forget those things at our peril.
Thank you. Becky, we'll start with you. How do you model respect for your students? And how do you get your students to demonstrate respect for all students in your school?
I love this question because I have only one rule in my classroom. And that rule is that you treat me and you treat each other with respect. And then I don't leave it there because I understand that there are a lot of people who have no idea what that word means. It's just a concept. It's abstract. It's not something you can touch. And so we spend probably 20 to 30 minutes discussing what respect is. What does it sound like? What does it look like? How do we live in respect? And I have them talk to each other, have conversations. And if I hear a curse word, I'm sure that the kids talk about me throughout the school. Oh, don't curse in Dr. Hamilton's class, because I'll call them out. I actually called a parent. This boy, he just couldn't stop cursing. And he always apologized, but he was not making the effort to catch himself. And so I said, how would your parents feel if they knew you were cursing like this in my class? Oh, they wouldn't care. I said, oh, okay, let's find out. So we went into my office and we called, and luckily for him, I had to leave a message. But then I sent a follow-up email, and the mother responded to the email and said, he will never curse in your class again. And he never did. So I think that it's important to not just establish that rule, but to make sure they follow it. I don't let them say shut up to each other because it's impolite, it's rude. And plus, I'm not teaching English now, but having been in the English department for 40 years, I think that it's important for people to enhance their vocabulary. Maybe use some Shakespearean slurs or something that no one will understand, but you're still getting your point across, right? I think it's, they call it vulgar language for a reason. Vulgar meaning base or low. You know, raise your vocabulary, be nice to each other. Please be quiet. You're bothering me, you know, and it sounds silly when they say it, but it's far more effective. And then they're nice to each other, and then that carries on outside the classroom. And yes, and I treat them that way too. I treat them as adults until they prove to me that they can't handle being treated that way. Then I say, children. Go ahead, Eric.
Okay, well, I mean, a lot of what Becky said is sort of what I do, but I mean, the question is, how do you model respect? I guess by modeling it. So that's how I start in my classroom, modeling respect. And my students' first day in, I tell them we are all equal. Here, I'm the teacher, the students. I expect you to respect me. I expect you to be respecting the other students, and I will respect you as well. When we start, going over the classroom rules, I said all those classroom rules, really, one word will add them up: respect. You're not late to my class. You listen to your other students. You don't get up. So I always say, respect is the first thing that we do in class. And like she said, sometimes kids do not even understand what it is or how you can offend somebody else. So you do have to give examples, concrete examples. When kids say something wrong, I said, that is disrespectful. And I think it's because in society today, the kids, the way they talk to each other, they don't realize that they're being disrespectful. So again, at the very beginning, I tell them, this is what's going to be right, this is wrong. And if somebody does something wrong, I just usually talk to them about it, not just completely, berate them, but I want to talk to them about it because they need to understand that they're going to make mistakes, but I do want them to be aware. And in society today, you do need to be aware because people will be offended, and you need to know what's right and what is wrong. So I think that right off the bat, be a role model to the kids.
Thank you.
I believe it all starts with humanity. It incorporates respect. But I think one of the biggest mistakes that particularly young teachers make, and I can even remember being advised this, is come in with a stern face and never crack a smile, and because they'll take advantage of you. This whole idea as teacher, as God in the room, is simply the wrong approach. And I think you foster respect when you show your own humanity. There have been multiple times where I have misstepped, or I have said something incorrectly, or I might have not intentionally, but have offended a student or a colleague. And as soon as it's pointed out to me, whether it's a student or a colleague, I am first to apologize for it and then ask for them to teach me more about what it is that has offended them so that I don't do it again. And by that modeling, by showing that area of humanity, we share with our students that we're all capable of making errors, but we're all capable of learning and growing from them. And I think the humanity factor is the primary thing that helps students grow in that particular area.
Kristen?
I start off my school year by modeling respect for my kids by centering them and listening to them. After the first day, the first activity that we do in my classroom is I sit them in small groups, and we have big chart paper. They put it in a quadrant, and as a group, they have to answer and talk about what worked well for you last year in learning science. What didn't work well for you last year in science? What do you think you need to be successful in this class? And then I asked them, I said, this is the risk question. What have you heard about me or my class? And then they write, we do one quadrant at a time, and they put their chart paper up on the wall, and we spend 2 class periods talking through it. So tell me more about this. What was your experience when you say that, when you say, well, we had a hard, this was hard. Well, what do you mean by hard? Hard that it took you a long time, hard that it was a complex task, and so we get at, and we have very open conversations, particularly about me. And I say to them, through the lens of if you heard something negative about me, you can say that. It's okay. I want to give you the opportunity to say that, but I want to be able to be given the opportunity to explain to you why might someone have said that about me. Because you need to learn about me as your teacher just as much as I need to learn about you as my students. And that's what I do in the first 2 days of class. And from there, I use very specific things that particular cohort of students said worked for them or did not work for them. And I pointed out to them as we moved through the first week or 2 of school and how I'm structuring my lessons and what we're doing in class. I'm doing this because I remember that someone said this. And so modeling back and forth that communication, but showing them how I am, my first and foremost purpose beyond teaching physics is meeting their needs in teaching physics. And so for me, that's how I demonstrate respect for them. And I think that shows them naturally that they are going to be respected in my classroom. And then that's the expectation for everyone.
Thank you, Kristen.
So I'll say, beside this question, I wrote 2 words, and they really are in line with what Karen said. I wrote be human, right? Kids think that teachers live in the school under the desk.
Yeah.
And in the
Sleep
morning,
in our closet.
when the bell rings, we just climb out, we yawn, and then we go to the board, right?
Yeah.
That's not the case. So we're talking about our first days and how we start. So first day, hi, I'm Monica Washington. I'll be your AP English teacher this year, but I want you to know that I'll also be a student. And I know you all are my students, but I hope you know that you will also be teachers. And so I want them to know that they have so much to share and that they are already so smart. And just that one little thing goes a long way. And so we talk about how we are a learning family, right? And so by the time they get to 11th grade, they probably, they've had grudges with each other since 2nd grade. They stay together. So they're still mad about what happened on the playground. It's you know what? In here we have put that outside. So we're a family, and there is such an importance on equity of voice. So we've all been taught, and we've told our teachers that we mentor that we don't have to be the sage on the stage, right? We share that. And so I want to know what my students think. I want to know how they're feeling. I want to know all the things. When I mess up, as Karen said, I say I'm sorry. And I also have these little things I call apology bags. So I know what they like, what their candy bar is and whatever. It's like, oh my gosh, I said that thing or I did whatever. And so I make a little bag and I make it a point to go and deliver it to whatever other class they're in. And I go, I am so sorry for that thing that I said or that thing that I did. And they just appreciate the fact that I'm human and I can say that I messed up. And I also give them the space and the grace to also mess up too. Like, it is okay. We're in there to learn together. And so, they will start to call each other on that. We use our names when we're talking to each other. I sometimes say, Mr. So-and-so, Miss whoever, right? I want to make sure that they know that I see them as who they are. I saw you at that game. Oh, I really love your haircut. They feel seen, they feel heard. And it doesn't matter if I am talking to another teacher when they enter my room, I have to stop talking to that teacher and say good morning. So, just those things that we want them to do for other people are the things that we also have to do. And they will call you on it. If I'm flustered because you know what, we had an assembly, it ran over, and now I only have this many minutes, and I walk in, and I'm like, you didn't say good morning. Good morning, everybody. How are you? Everybody feeling good? Right. And so just giving them that space, even in the classroom, having a chill chair. They're flustered. They need a minute. Let them sit there. So just that community building that I've been talking about all day, that is what enables them to then respect each other, because they will say, you were rude to her, or start that over. And I ask, how do you want to feel in this classroom? So what can you do to make other people feel that way? And so that's the root of it.
Thank you, Monica. Eric, start with you. What do you plan to do now that you are a Hall of Famer with the challenge of being an ambassador for education to elevate the level of respect for the profession?
Wow, loaded question. Well, the first thing I would say is that I will continue being a role model. Be a professional so they can see what I think teaching should be. Support all the teachers in my school and the community, and try to reach out to our community organizations so they can see that what they hear about teaching is not all true, and that they can actually maybe invite them to our classroom so they can see what it is that we do as professionals. Because they all think, I know what teachers do, but they truly do not know what we do. So I know that now having another title to my name will give me some validation, but I want to make sure that they understand, come to us, come to our school, come see what all teachers are doing, because we have amazing teachers. And for every one bad apple, there's so many good ones. And I think that's what people need to understand, that the teachers are working very diligently all the time to make sure that the students learn what they need to do. Just like Monica said, parents and teachers want the same thing for the kids. So I think that we need to make sure that we bring them in and be the voice to say, this is what teachers do, and that we are professionals.
Thank you. Karen?
I believe that this provides a forum for us to be even more vocal about our profession. And that's the key word. It's a profession. And as Kristen shared earlier, there is no other profession out there where people that do not have the experience, where we've spent quite literally our lives dedicated to, who come in and tell us what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. I would not dream of going into my doctor's office and telling him how to test me for a variety of different illnesses, or, he or she. But yet it happens in our profession all the time. And so to me, having this platform is a charge that I take very seriously. I was vocal before. I'm going to be even more vocal now, probably to the embarrassment of my boys at home. Sorry, guys. But it's just something I truly believe in, and I love being a teacher, and I love our profession, and I want to do everything that I can in order to elevate it, and I plan to be loud about it.
Thank you. Kristen?
I'll echo what Karen just said. I was loud before. I'm going to keep being that way. I want to continue the advocacy and policy work that I've been doing. I want to keep being a voice for teachers all around my town, my country, my state, as to what responsible legislation looks like to advocate for strong policies for kids and teachers and the profession. And I want to continue to bring teachers and our voices into spaces where we don't normally have a seat at the table and where we don't normally have a voice. I think the more teachers that can enter those spaces that are traditionally closed off to us, the better it is for kids, the better it is for our communities. So I'm gonna keep doing what I've been doing. And, as Karen said, this is just a charge that reaffirms work that I've been doing. And, I'm 23 years in, and I still see myself being in the classroom and doing this for many more years to come.
Thank you, Kristen. Monica?
Yeah, I think the best teachers have already been ambassadors, right? It could be that they've been doing this even from the first year. They've been an ambassador for it. But what they lacked probably is the microphone, the platform to be listened to be heard. And so I remember becoming Teacher of the Year for my state. I was saying the same things that I've been saying for years before, but then finally people invited me into spaces that I was never invited into, and that kind of made me mad. But then I decided to just use that, right? And so I think what this does is, again, as you heard, it opens even more doors. And so I think it's my responsibility to use this as an opportunity to listen even harder to teachers and to go in those spaces and say the things that they need me to say, even those things that are hard to say, to write the things that they need me to say, because they may not ever get to write them, even though they are Hall of Fame quality, caliber as well. So I want to continue to do those things, to be loud, to be proud, to tell people what we do, why we do it, and that we are the best people for it, because we do it every day and we're trained to do it. But also because our training didn't just come from pre-service. Our training came from being with those humans that we are in front of every day and learning from them. It's my students who have taught me, oh my gosh, they've been the best teachers for me. And so I think that this just allows us to have that microphone even closer, and they're bigger speakers now. And so I'm going to use it to the best of my ability. Yeah.
Thank you, Monica. Becky?
On top of becoming a Hall of Fame inductee, I'm also in a program called DROP, which in Florida, that means I'm going to retire within the next 5 years. So I feel like I have a place and a voice that is unique among most of my peers, because I can say what I want now, because they can threaten to fire me and it doesn't make any difference whatsoever. So I do that. I tell my students at the beginning of the year, I recognize my white privilege. So I'm still a woman, which is a minority, but I know I have it. So if you're not getting what you need at this school, you come to me and I will speak for you. I will put your education to the forefront and help you get what you need to be successful at this school, because I teach at a tough school. It's very highly academically rated, and some kids struggle. And so that is something that helps them in education, but also because I'm close to retirement, as Eric brought up earlier, when it comes to retention, we need mentoring, and I would like to go to the department, the district office, the Department of Recruiting and Retainment, and talk to them about starting a mentoring program with retired teachers. I want to, because so many of our retired teachers end up being out for a year because of the retirement system. You can't immediately go back to teaching. You have to set out a year. So but then they come back and start teaching again. And it's not that they really want to get up early. High school starts for us at 7:30, so up at 5 o'clock. But they don't want to lose touch with the classroom. So I would like to propose that they hire retired teachers as mentors to help bring the new teachers some comfort. And that way, the retired teachers are still active in education, but they're not having to do the whole 9 yards with everything else. And that also frees up the veteran teachers who are still in the classroom from mentoring. Because again, if you have veteran teachers mentoring, then that's pulling them in so many different directions that it's too much. So that's my plan.
Thank you, Becky.
Yes.
Oh, you
Oh,
started.
I
it. You
started.
There we go.
I'll repeat.
So we have our final question, and we have about 15 minutes left in our wonderful webinar. So about 3 minutes per person. Karen, we'll start with you. What suggestions do you have for universities and other teacher preparation programs that will assist them in recruiting and preparing pre-K-12 teachers for the challenges that lie ahead?
I'm going to start this answer by giving a shout out to my bachelor program, Queen's University of Charlotte, go Royals. Their education group really, I felt, prepared me well to become a teacher. And I think that is because of a couple of things. Number one, they helped us clearly define where our own teaching philosophy was. Even though we hadn't entered the classroom yet, we studied a variety of different philosophies, and we all had to settle upon one, knowing that we would evolve over time. I chose essentialism. Essentialism being that every subject that is available really is important in the development of a child into adulthood, that every subject contributed. Reading, mathematics, science, social studies, PE, the arts, they all help form a well-informed citizen of this country. And Ron Clark, who's a very famous educator in Atlanta, I had the chance to attend a professional development from his school, and he stated it very well that education as a profession is key to secure the security of a nation. And I hadn't really ever heard of it stated before in that manner. But what I am seeing today in university programs is that young teachers, pre-service teachers, are coming out of that program very unprepared. With, as I shared earlier, a lack of good education in the sciences. Elementary teachers need to understand basic science principles. They need to understand how to teach science, how to teach history. They do fairly well in preparing for language arts and for mathematics. And I think that really came from the push from the George W. Bush administration with No Child Left Behind, with those two courses or two subjects being emphasized and everything else dropped off because of the emphasis in standardized testing. And that's a whole other subject that I won't get on my soapbox about, but I could for about an hour and a half. So an overhaul of the undergraduate program really needs to be done to include those essential elements for all of those subject areas, being shown that they all help shape a child. And I think it really starts early in order to make that improvement. The other piece of it is putting those pre-service teachers in positions where they are practicing those essential elements we've been talking about during this entire webinar. Teachers as learners, finding the human element and relating to students in the classroom, but even putting them in the position of mentorship earlier. So as they go through, encouraging them to come back and be mentors to pre-service teachers, finding out from them what they need in order to be mentored properly. Providing that kind of support for them, I think, is also critically important. And then finally, I also think that there really needs to be classwork on critical thinking, because in this day and age, one of the major flaws that I see in our society, and it's because of the quick and easy access to information, and I put information in quotes because it's not accurate all the time, is that critical thinking isn't being taught in our classrooms for the most part. And it's because I think we don't really know how to teach it well. And so I think there needs to be some classwork for pre-service teachers in how to help their students to think critically, to analyze information, and to make sure it's accurate before they come to a decision that is actually an informed decision.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Kristen?
Twofold. I think teacher prep programs need to look at their candidates first, and make sure that their candidates are top quality candidates. I think preparation programs need to get those teacher candidates into schools as soon as possible. Provide those candidates with as many diverse experiences in schools as possible. So that means if you're going to be training to be, certification is 712, make sure that your candidates have experience in a middle school, have experience in a high school, have experience in not diverse communities, have experience in diverse communities, have experience in content areas, content disciplines. Just because you're going to train to be a math teacher, not every math class is the same. And you need to understand and grow those skills. So providing as many opportunities to be in school as possible. On the flip side, I think that teacher preparation programs really need to look at their teaching faculty. If their teaching faculty is predominantly made up of people that have not seen the inside of a school or a classroom on a regular basis since before the pandemic, that is going to be a huge problem for you as an institution of teacher preparation. Things are very different now. And whether it is that you require your teaching faculty to spend time in schools and utilize that time as part of their professional responsibilities, or whether it means that you hire more practicing educators as adjuncts to come in and work within your program, that part is vitally important. You need teaching faculty that have recent school-based experience. That is what will give your pre-service candidates the strongest preparation possible for their future careers.
Thank you, Kristen. Monica?
Yeah, so when I entered the profession 25, almost 26 years ago, I entered without anyone ever saying anything to me about, I don't think we were talking about social emotional needs or culturally responsive teaching, but I got in there and I realized that those things had to come before me teaching them how to write an essay. And so as I talk to teachers who are in pre-service programs now, I still don't hear a lot of that. I still don't hear that is as big of an emphasis as it needs to be. And if you've learned anything from us today, you've learned that that's how we have to lead. That's how we best connect with our students. And so while we do have to be strong in our content area, and I think, pre-service programs do a really great job of making sure, like if you're science, be strong. English, be strong. But also be strong in balancing teaching with also the emotional aspect of the job. If we're not calling that out before they get in there, culture shock, you're not just an English teacher, right? You're many other things. And so I think there has to be some emphasis on how do we balance the diverse needs of what students are walking into the door with what's on paper for the state, objective, blah, blah, blah for the day. How do we do that? Give them some practical examples and have them work through what happens if this lesson does not go right. We so often plan for the great lesson, but what happens when it's just them and the door closes and things are not going well? So there needs to be, more practice with that, and also teaching them how to be connected to other great educators early on in their career. In my state of Texas, there is no mandated mentoring program, but how do they seek the right people in their building, or if there is no one in their building that they feel that they can connect with, where do you go outside of your building to get the type of support that you need to stay in the profession? And so we have to figure out how to balance that, how to be strong in your content, but also how do we meet the diverse needs of post-pandemic students who have to deal with so many inequities. How do we do that, right? So we're not talking about that enough, I don't think, in pre-service programs.
Thank you, Monica.
I think the only thing I can add is Monica touched on it brilliantly, but universities need to find teachers who fit that description and pair their students with those teachers so they can see how it works. We can't teach all of it in the classroom at a university. They have to be in the real world and experiencing it and seeing someone who can do exactly what Monica described.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, it was incredible. I mean, I was writing things and then they said it. And then she was saying something about, I mean, I was totally, oh my God. I remember professors teaching and I'm like, when was the last time you were in a classroom? A real classroom, not a perfect where you have 10 kids and they all want to learn and whatever. So you said that already, real life. I think sometimes we spend so many hours doing lesson plans and that goes out the window the minute you walk in and you're like, I have it so pretty. I'm ready to teach. I'm like, no, you're not. Because what's in front of you is completely, and you have to take care of the children's needs. So I just have to say that what the ladies said, all of them, I guess that's what happens when you last. They already know the answers. So, but yes, I did what my colleagues said.
Thank you, Eric. So the top mission of the National Teachers Hall of Fame is to honor and recognize exemplary career teachers. So if you ever wondered or asked yourself, who is an exemplary career teacher? What does that mean to be an exemplary career teacher? You have just spent 90 minutes with the best examples of exemplary career teachers that this nation has. So thank you to the inductees in the class of 2023 for all that you've contributed this afternoon. And thank you to all of you for watching and supporting both exemplary career teaching and the National Teachers Hall of Fame. Thank you and good day.